Islamic country, Iran, is the threat to peace in the world and not the Zionist. Is it America's support of Israel? Well, hundreds of people are getting killed in Gaza and West Bank every day with the support of America. The Israel-Palestinian war has been going on for 61 years, and we are not actually looking at what is actually happening, and we're fearing about what is not happening. We're fearing about something that hasn't happened.
It's become a familiar thing. I should perhaps preface this by saying that with Edward Said, the late Professor Edward Said, I wrote a book about the rights of Palestinians and the way in which these have been negated by Israeli policy. But I know a lot of people in the Arab and Muslim world who are fed up with having the subject changed to Israel whenever human rights for them comes up. A very good example of this just last week in Tehran, where the government has an official Al-Quds Day, as it's called, the Day of Jerusalem, where school children and others are paraded. It's a more or less compulsory demonstration to say they'll give their blood and their lives for Palestine. And hundreds of thousands of Iranians turned up to say, no, we'll only give our blood for Iran, thanks. We're fed up with being told by the regime that they represent the oppressed of Palestine, that we can't talk. And they are having to shed their blood, because the regime keeps on killing them for wanting to have a say in their own internal affairs. And a regime that does this and has just pulled off a blood-stained military coup that's overturned the results even of an already predeterminedly fraudulent election, that says that, that a woman's voice is worth that of only... sorry, it takes 3 women in a court against 1 man, that uses torture and rape as policies in prison and so forth. You want a regime like that to have nuclear weapons? You're welcome. But you should say that's what you don't mind. Are you going to say that? Are you going to say you've no objection? That the real problem is the Jewish state? Come on, be serious.
So the Jewish state doesn't have nuclear weapons? Is that what you're saying?
Well, now, I appeal again to the fair-mindedness and intelligence of the audience. Did I say that?
No, but...
Did I in any way imply it?
No, but... No.
Did I not begin with a throat clearing, which I'll amplify if you like, about my long record of work about this, my defense of the Israeli dissidents who published the news about Israel's illegal program and gone to jail for it. I can refer you to all that if you like. But my point was directed specifically to you. Yeah. I said, does this, in your mind, make the destruction of human rights in Islamic countries okay or not?
No.
Good.
Okay, no, let's hear from Walid.
Well, that's progress of the kind.
Time in a different place, so it would have different ethical beliefs. Doesn't give me a reason to doubt them. If you'd been born in a different time in a different place, you would have had different religious beliefs. Doesn't give you a reason to doubt them. So here's the question. Don't you agree?
I think I must have expressed myself very poorly in the first instance. When I said, but I seem to remember what I said, and I'll just have to submit myself to the arbitration of you, my peers. I believe I said that it would be possible to be an atheist and be sorry with your conclusion, that you could be an atheist who wishes that there was a God. Did I not say that? I've met such people, but that I, to the contrary, am an anti-theist who is very relieved, given what the implications of divine rule would be, that there is no evidence for the proposition. Now, I hope that's plain now.
I'm wondering what the positive case was, that religion in general is false, and Christianity in particular. So I thought maybe one of the arguments was this diversity of religious belief maybe gives you a reason to think that your religion is false or something.
Well, I say the diversity of religious belief is not mysterious if you assume that God is made by man. It's only mysterious if you think that man is made by God. Yeah. Like worrying about why tsunamis kill good people. This is not a problem if you think that we live on a cooling planet with a disturbed weather system. That just will happen, doesn't require any explanation. Nothing to pray over, nothing to why about. Nothing to have a sob fest on CNN about. This question answers itself. It's only a mystery if you don't know that we live on a planet with a cooling crust and a turbulent climate system, and you think, well, maybe God decides at what point weather takes people out. Occam's razor is the critical thing here. Dispose always of unnecessary assumptions. Does the plague break out because we've sinned, and if so, is it because of our divorce rate? Is it because there are too many homosexuals among it? Is it because the Jews have poisoned the wells again? Is it all this? Is it all that? That's what people used to have to ask themselves about. well into the 18th century, until they worked out about the germ theory of the disease. Then they had to encounter people like Dr. Timothy Dwight, the great divine of Yale, who said, well, inoculation would be even worse because it would be an intervention in God's design, which, presuming that God wanted to keep the germ theory of disease from us and have us dying and thinking that disease was a curse, would be true. It would be. Inoculation would be an interference with his design in that case. But this is the kind of mentality one's arguing against all the time. Currently, polio is spreading back across the world. We thought we had eradicated it. A lot of very good secular activists and medical physicians went out to do the eradication. I went with them as far as Bengal. Suddenly, religious people started to say, don't take your children in. This is a plot. God doesn't want you to do it. It only takes a few uninoculated children and the disease has spread all the way back across Africa now, thanks to faith and the faith-based. If you're going to take credit for all the charitable work, you have to take credit for all the atrocities as well, and it will leave you exactly where you began, with everything still to be explained.
On the right here.
To the panel question, thousands of people dying from earthquakes can't be called God's punishment. Why is it that a person being saved from under the rubble days later is almost invariably called a miracle? And also, why should God be credited for a good act of a human being, saving a fellow human being from under the rubble, while God being spared for the calamity that was brought upon the people?
Yes. Look, I promise you I did not have anything to do with planting this guy in the audience and giving me such a brilliant opening. He even recognizes that I'm wearing in my lapel the flag of Free Iraq. The Kurdish people like it. Perhaps you're a Kurd yourself, I don't know, but if not, even better. In England, there are, I think, only 3 villages that don't have a war memorial from the First World War. One of them is called Upper Slaughter, by the way. It's in the Cotswolds. I think there are only 3 or 4 that don't. When I was a kid, I used to notice it, and of course anyone who's been to an Anzac Day event will feel the same way. This unbelievable horror show and culling of the young. Do you know what those villages are called by the Imperial War Graves Commission? They're called the Blessed Villages. What's blessed about being the only village in a war which was fought for God, king, and country, which didn't have any casualties? And what does it make all the villages that did lose dozens, or sometimes more than that, of young men, frequently every male member of the family? Are they cursed because they did what the church and the king asked them to do? It's probably the stupidest thing the human race does, is to look for patterns in this way and say, when a baby falls out of a high-rise building and bounces on the grass below, that must be God. And when millions of children die every day for the lack of pure drinking water and just die of diarrhea in a banal manner, that's because God moves in a mysterious way or isn't involved at all. So I think we're off to a racing start, ladies and gentlemen. On the key question.
Was the question audible to all?
No.
No. The gentleman reminding me that I'd said that the belief in God would entail a belief in the, let's call it for now, the Christian God, the loving creator God, would involve submitting yourself to permanent surveillance, supervision before you were born and after you were dead. Reminds me again that we are rule-bound as it is by matters such as gravity and the laws of physics. And he says, what do I make of that? Well, the laws of gravity don't apply to you after you're dead, whereas the laws of the Christian God do, or the Muslim God do. That would be the first distinction. The second is that there are indeed laws from which no one's exempt, but they don't require a permanent intrusion into your privacy or a permanent verdict upon your personal behavior or the threat that nothing you do will ever be exempted from a judgment. So those are as different from, those are as arbitrary compared to the laws of physics, I think, as anything could be. It's just 2 different senses of the word law. The question for me would rather be, this being the case, why do I care? Why do I, so to speak, why do I bother? That's a very good question. It also doesn't have any conclusive answer. What if it's random? Then why be interested?
Right over here. Aaron.
Yeah, I'm invited to be unpleasant at the expense of Ayn Rand. and objectivism. Well, that's easy. Well, the novels. I mean, as I keep trying to say that, you know, in my view, there's more morality in a novel by George Eliot than there is in any of the four Gospels, or the four of them put together. I care very much about literature as the place where the real dilemmas, ethical dilemmas, are met and dealt with. So to have novels as transcendently awful as Atlas Shrugged and The Fountain Pen sort of undermines my project. And then, though I have some respect for the virtue of Selfishness, a collection of essays, and I've argued about them with the chairman of the Federal Reserve, as a matter of fact. By the way, a state Federal Reserve bank is not part of the libertarian program. Though Mr. Greenspan seems a bit iffy about this self-evident proposition. I don't think there's any need to have essays advocating selfishness among human beings. I don't know what your impression has been, but some things require no further reinforcement. You know. Reminds me of Lillian Hellman was once in her declining years talking at some campus, and she would peer out over the crowd with her very thick dark glasses, and there was a squawking question from somewhere in the back, said, "Miss Hellman, why haven't you endorsed gay rights?" And Lillian Hellman sort of blearily peered again and drew herself up and said, "Well, I wonder what word I'm allowed to use in this august company." I'll quote her directly then. She said, "The forms of fucking do not require my endorsement." I wasn't that much of a fan of Miss Hellman. She could be a real bitch, but I thought that said it more or less all. So to have a book strenuously recommending that people be more self-centered seems to me, as the Anglican Church used to say in its critique of Catholicism, a work of supererogation. It's too strenuous.
Let's open it up to others, and let's start with Jim Peters.
Has there ever been a fatwa against you?
No, I don't think.
Have you ever gotten a threat?
Well, there wouldn't really. Well, that's an interesting question. There wouldn't really be if that were against me in normal Islamic law, because I've never been a Muslim, so I don't apostatize when I say what I think about the Quran or the Prophet. I dwell in what they call jahiliyyah, ignorance. It's not my fault. Salman Rushdie, my friend, got a fatwa against him because he had been a Muslim, and he could be sentenced to death for abandoning his religion, because not the Quran but the Hadith state very explicitly the penalty for changing your religion is death. Lately, it's been a slightly sinister development, which is, since around the time of the Danish cartoon controversy of last year, threats have been made against non-Muslims by Muslim extremists, saying if you criticize the Quran, you should be beheaded, whether you're Muslim or not. Now that people haven't noticed, but that actually is crossing an even still more dangerous line. Yes, I did once get a threat, a believable one. At least the State Department counterterrorism office told me that they thought it was believable. It was from Iran, and they asked me to change my address.
And did you?
No, because I thought, first, if you start running, you'll never stop, and second, if they know where I live now, it won't be that hard for them to find out where I've moved.
Did the State Department provide any security or anything?
No, I didn't ask them to either. No. And here I still am.
Next call for Christopher Hitchens, Miami. You're on the air.
Yes, Mr. Hitchens, I enjoyed your Love, Poverty, and War very much.
Thank you.
Particularly the essays on Churchill and the Future of an Illusion. My question is, we have a situation where perverted priests, confidence men such as Pat Robertson, buffoons like Al Sharpton, all these characters build these enormous financial empires, and yet they aren't subjected to taxation like the rest of us, simply because they claim to be in the service of a higher power. Is this ludicrous situation an anomaly to us here in the States, or is it common to the rest of the world? And again, I enjoy your work very much. Thank you.
Well, it's an unintended byproduct of something that does make the United States unique, which is that